Three, two, one. This is Nick.
And this is Amanda.
And this is the Performance Plate Podcast, where we give you bite-sized bits of information based on nutrition and exercise science to improve your overall performance. Welcome back to another episode of the Performance Plate Podcast. On this episode, we are going to talk about hydration and what actual hydration means, because everyone thinks hydration is just chug a shit ton of water and see what happens, and I'm hydrated.
Yes, so we're going to talk all about it. We were actually nerding out before talking about diffusion, cell diffusion.
And how
But
the body works and muscles contract and all that
yes.
fun stuff, because, apparently me and Amanda, or Amanda and I, are actually really nerdy. Because cell bio and biology from when we were in undergrad, still in our brain from years and years ago, and probably from high school, like diffusion and osmosis and all that stuff.
Okay. Yes, we are. We've known this though.
Yeah.
Um, the reason that we need to talk about this is because it's not just as simple as drinking water sometimes, because you have to understand how your cells actually hydrate and what water does. So water, it transports nutrients and waste. It's going to deliver nutrients, hydration, oxygen to our cells, while removing the toxins and the cellular waste. So it's also going to help with cellular communication. So it's going to allow them to communicate with each other and maintain proper electrical charges.
That's a huge factor.
Right, exactly. Which is connected to our electrolytes and our balance of those. So that's why we need to talk about that. And then also protects tissues. Your athletes, I'm sure you have this conversation with them all the time, how it cushions bones and joints and helps absorb shock. It's a big thing
A huge factor in so not to just to show people how important hydration is. So your cerebral spinal fluid, which is the stuff that surrounds your brain and in your spinal cord and all that stuff, it's a lot of hydration is very important for that. And there have been some research showing that people are more likely to get concussions, which is a brain injury, when they are less hydrated, because there's less cerebral spinal fluid and all that stuff going on in there, and the brain sits in like that. So the more hydrated you are, the more it can fluidly move and things of that sort. So as Amanda said, like, yeah, it cushions bones, it cushions joints, it helps with all these other things that we just don't think about. It's a huge factor. It's so much more than just drinking water.
Yeah.
Like
Oh
you
my
can be
gosh.
so you can over drink water. Let's put it that way. So like someone was saying, oh, carrying a gallon of water a day. That's what brought this podcast up. Carrying a gallon of water around a day and just chugging that whole thing. And they were like, I got sick from it. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can be over watered, we'll say,
Yeah.
overhydrated in that aspect.
Yes. Overwatered.
Yes. Well, it's hypernatremic is
Yes.
the fancy word for it, which means you've taken in too much water.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and so, well, let's talk about like what proper hydration looks like and the
Mhm.
signs and symptoms of that, because um I don't like, for example, skin issues and dry skin.
Mhm.
Oh, what serum do I need? Do I need a medication? No, drink your fucking water.
Yes.
Like it's
Start there.
so connected to everything.
I don't need the $100 vitamin C serum.
Right, exactly. So like smooth, clear, hydrated skin, that's going to be a result of proper hydration, mental clarity, energy, regular bowel movements. This
Huge.
is a big one, huge one. Yes, if you are chronically constipated, make sure you are drinking enough water first and foremost. Healthy blood pressure, kidney and bladder health. So like, if you're constantly getting constantly getting UTIs, like, are you dehydrated all the time?
Yes.
Joint health, we were talking about before, inflammation balance. So water is one of the body's greatest defenses against inflammation, which is what makes it so important, especially in chronic disease, detoxification, and athletic performance, as again we were talking about before. So those are all things that you get from being properly hydrated. And
Yes.
when any of those things are off, you always want to think about water. Are you getting enough, and are you hydrating appropriately?
Mhm.
Um, so signs of early dehydration, like those are rarely actually present. You're usually not getting the early signs of it. You're only getting signs and signals once you're moderately dehydrated.
Yeah.
And it would be increased thirst, dry mouth, fatigue, sleepiness, decreased urine output, or dark colored urine, headache, dry skin, dizziness. All of those are signs and symptoms of dehydration. So you're moderate dehydration, not even mild.
Yeah.
So even though organ systems might be affected with mild dehydration, we don't get the signs and symptoms. So we're not actually then drinking water and hydrating until we're more moderately or maybe even severely dehydrated.
Not gonna lie, just talking about hydration is making me so thirsty. I'm
Yeah, I can't wait to drink my water
I'm
after.
looking at my water bottle and I'm like, am I moderately dehydrated? I feel really thirsty. I
Yeah.
feel a headache coming on. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, this could be bad. Even though
Oh
I feel
God, I'm in South Carolina right now. It's so humid outside.
oh
And we were, you know, on the golf course this morning and I'm so irritated.
man.
And I'm like, oh, it's because while I'm drinking all this water, no electrolytes in it. I'm sweating so much out right now. I'm
Hmm.
dehydrated.
Yes. That's another sign. Irritability
Yes,
can happen from
exactly.
poor hydration.
Exactly.
And why we really wanted to do it though was because of, so I'm glad you brought up the humidity because the person that suggested we also really touch on this specifically asked like what do you do in places like Florida or really
Hmm.
humid climates that hydration is problematic sometimes if you're an outdoor worker, if you run outside and all of those little factors. And that's where really, like Amanda was saying, if you just drink water in those places, you're really not actually hydrating yourself efficiently enough
Hmm.
because you're sweating out all this stuff and
Yes.
you don't remember if you don't know what sweat is made of. Sweat is not just water coming out of your body. You have all your electrolytes in there as well, your sodiums, your potassiums. I don't know
Right.
why I'm putting plurals on them, but that stuff is
Think
coming
about
out of
after
your
you
body.
sweat and how like you could almost like white, like you get kind of gross after. Like
Yeah.
once it dries and you get that, what's that feeling?
It's like a film. It's like, oh,
Yes,
like, yeah,
exactly. You almost like wipe it off. Like if you've ever
yeah.
been really sweaty before,
Hmm.
that's all of those electrolytes being sweat out, which is also why there's so many sports drinks exist.
Yes.
Mhm.
Gatorade did a very good job at putting sodium in its
Yes.
formula to help people hydrate
Yes,
better.
exactly.
That was
Exactly.
the number one hydration thing for so long.
Yeah, and so as like a general rule of thumb, people should be drinking about half their body weight in ounces of water per day. So like if you were 200 pounds, 100 ounces of water per day. However, if you are someone that is sweating a lot due to a humid temperature, due to exercise, I don't know, what are some other reasons for sweating? There might be some more.
No, I mean, really,
Those
manual
are the
labor,
biggest ones.
you know, manual labor. So like
Yes, yeah.
things like
Depending,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you have increased sweat, like due to any really reason, you need
Unless
to
you
be
have, what is it,
doing that.
hyperhidrosis, where you're over sweaty.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's another one, but that's a medical diagnosis. So
yeah,
that's different. We won't talk about that.
yeah. Um, yeah, so you want to be drinking even more than that then. Like that's not going to suffice. Now the easiest and the best way to really tell is by the color of your urine. So it should be this light yellow color. Anything darker, you are probably in need of some water. Anything lighter, maybe you're not absorbing it properly due to electrolyte imbalance, or you're overhydrating, if it's
So,
like chronically clear all the time.
which fun fact about Amanda and I before we did this episode of the podcast, I had a pee. And she's like, let me know what the color of your pee was because we're nerds. And yes, what happened was I was like, she's like, don't come back and tell me it's clear. Because I was like, oh, it'll probably be clear. And I was joking around. She's like, well, don't tell me it's clear. That means you're not absorbing anything. And I'm like, no, 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 it'll probably be a pale yellow. And it was a pale yellow. But point,
100.
yes.
A
So,
plus.
but her point what is, and like we were saying, with that whole gallon of water and all those factors, one, you don't need that much pure water. If you're noticing every time you pee, it's purely clear, like man said, maybe you have a disbalance, I don't think that's a word, but an unbalance in how you're absorbing things because you're just over
Yeah. So
you're literally
let's talk about osmosis and how water enters your cells.
yes,
So it's through something this we're going to use just the simplest explanation. It's passive transport. So
yes.
what happens is water enters your cells based on a gradient.
Hmm.
So the based on a concentration gradient. So if your cell is you're laughing because I'm like
I'm,
trying to
I'm
play science teacher right now.
yeah.
If you have a ton of ions in your in your cell. You have sodium, potassium,
Hmm.
and there's not a lot of water. Okay, so it's your water, the water is going to flow to where it's less concentrated. So the water's like, I got to flow in because there's
Hmm.
a ton of ions in there. If there wasn't as much sodium or potassium in there, there wouldn't be a need for the water to flow into the cell.
Hmm.
So that's where electrolytes come in, because if you're deficient, if you're not getting enough potassium or sodium or electrolytes, like, then the water might not be hydrating your cells as efficiently. And it's not just about getting the water into your bloodstream, it's about getting it into the cells. So
Hmm.
that's where electrolytes are really important. And that's where that electrical balance comes in.
Because if you are not having that happen, so we're once again we're gonna get really this episode is gonna be the most probably one of the more nerdiest ones we've had, we'll say. Because what happens though is if you're not getting the water into the cells as nicely as you can, it can actually, if too much, it sits in your bloodstream, it thins your blood,
Mm-hmm.
which is not good because we don't want thin blood. Um, Too thin blood. We want our blood to be normal. We don't want it too thin, because that can lead to a whole mess of other problems. Where like the one person that commented on one of my stories saying that she got sick and all these things happen to her because if your blood's too thin, then you can get what's known as your your blood pressure can drop, and then you have a whole mess of situations happening that you don't want to actually have happen because of the water's just not going, is not doing
Your blood
osmosis.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you want that osmosis to happen.
Yeah, and well, the opposite end of that too, and this is where it connects to high blood pressure, is when you don't have enough water in your bloodstream, your
Hmm.
blood becomes more viscous or
Biscuit.
like
Yeah.
viscous, thank you, yeah, and it is thicker, and then you
Hmm.
have higher blood pressure because it's harder to pump. So
You don't want, so the main thing there is you don't want too much of this and you don't want too little of this because you want to be right in the middle. Your body
right.
loves homeostasis, which is the baseline of everything. Like you want to be at a homeostatic state where you're neutral, where things are flowing nicely in and out. You're not too high on this, you're not too low on this because your
Mhm.
body wants to balance everything out. So you don't want to be overly hydrated and you don't want to be underly hydrated. You want to be
Yeah.
in the middle, just good hydration because those little things take into account. Because there are also other ways of people overdo their electrolytes, we'll say. Because
Yeah.
people think of hydration and they're like, all right, like more or less you see it with performance athletes where they're more likely to overdo their electrolytes because they know they need them. But remember, you can overdo one electrolyte and you still need the other ones. If you're taking
Yes.
too much sodium per se and not enough potassium
Mhm.
and actually magnesium as well,
Yes.
and even calcium too, uh,
Hmm.
you can get cramps, you know, and vice versa. If you're taking in not enough, you also can get cramps. But if you're over cramping and you realize in the day all you've had was Gatorade all day long and no, like it wasn't cut with anything, it wasn't watered down. You only having Gatorade, which I'm pretty sure just has, I don't know how much potassium is in it, but I'm pretty sure it's just sodium really. Uh,
Hmm.
and the uh the electrolyte imbalance can happen, then you're gonna start getting cramps.
Hmm.
And if you get those cramps, not ideal because we'll go into our nerdiness again when when the electrical signal comes for muscles to contract, there's a gradient between sodium and potassium, and they both switch. One flows out, one flows in.
Hmm.
If too much is flowing out and too much and not enough flowing in, you can get cramps and all those other things.
Hmm.
We want these we want these balances to be there. So when Amanda and I say hydration, we do look at water, yes, but we don't look at just water.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
can.
and also too, like, I mean, not even just water hydrates you.
Mhm.
Like you actually you like juices and even coffee to a certain extent can
Yeah,
hydrate you.
yeah.
Um,
There's a funny story with coffee with my uncle. He only drinks coffee. He's like, "Well, there's water in it." And I'm like, "All right, man. Okay." He switches to decaf at some point, but still, I'm like,
the problem with coffee is it's also diuretic, so like you're
"Yeah,
also be peeing out more water, which
yeah."
makes it somewhat dehydrating. But like to a certain extent, it does technically hydrate you. Um, but yeah, like it's not even just water when you think about this. We also get water from our food too.
Mhm.
So depending on the food that you're eating.
And
Um,
sodium and potassium.
yeah. Mhm.
So you have to think of that too, is what are you eating throughout the day? Like, let's say you ate a lot of watermelon in a day. The why I use watermelon is just because it's a very simple example because everyone knows how juicy watermelon can be.
Mhm.
That's gonna hydrate you, you know?
Yeah.
So like you don't have to always worry about like, oh crap, I didn't drink a gallon of water today. Well, maybe in your food you got it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
I just think that most people tend to be underhydrated rather than like, or maybe not properly hydrated is, and again, is the reason that we're doing this podcast.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it's proper.
yeah, exactly. And the thing is too, something like watermelon contains electrolytes. So if you think about electrolytes, you can simply put like lemon or lime juice in your water, a little bit of fresh squeezed orange juice, like all of those things will contain electrolytes. And it's food, so it's going to contain things in balance too, more likely than just dumping sodium into your water.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to use is Celtic sea salt because it does
Mhm.
contain a bunch of different minerals versus like table salt, which is mainly just sodium, right?
Mhm.
Um, but also too, something like the LMT packets are great, like especially if you're going, if you're an athlete or you're going on a long hike or
Mhm.
doing, some sort of vigorous activity, those are nice.
We will say we're not sponsored by Element. It's just what we both use.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
at least I use because I've always
yeah.
I'm like, I'm using my Element. And she's like, do you need it today? And I was like, I do. I, I need it today.
No, I use it too. I think
Yeah.
that that's probably one of my favorites. Something like, what's it called? Liquid IV,
Mhm.
just it's high in sugar. So
Yeah.
why? Like we don't need the sugar in there. That's not helping anything. We're looking for the electrolytes, not the sugar. I think sometimes those two things can get confused too. Like we're talking about that, not blood sugar.
Yes. No, yeah, yeah.
It's another conversation. Yeah.
Because it's true. Like you have to think about that. Like there like a lot of what we preach, there's intention between a lot of stuff that you want to think about.
Mhm.
Like if it's palatable and that's the only way you can get it down, fine. Liquid IV is great and all that, but there is higher in sugar content. It's not.
Well, I'm also saying too, because blood sugar can sometimes be confused with like low
Mhm.
blood pressure
Yeah,
because the symptoms can often be the same. So low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, fatigued, confused, tired, lethargic, like that can
yeah,
also be like, you see where
yeah.
that's where I was
There's
kind of going with that. Yeah.
um, so yeah, the connection there. It's a lot of symptoms can kind of overlap with each other.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I feel like we could talk about too is where do you get your water
mhm.
and
It's
the quality of your water?
a huge factor.
Yeah. I know you and Leanne use zero water, right?
We use zero water just because our water was tested and it had some not so good stuff in it for you
The
to
heavy
take in.
metals.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big,
Uh so we decided to use a zero water, but she put salt in her water. I use element packages when
yeah.
I need to. I don't always use them. I use them on training days or days before high intense training days.
Hmm.
Um, and to give examples, my Yeti is a liter. Yes, it's a liter. And I've asked Amanda about this because I was like, well, do I want to drink it all at once? Um, I don't. I actually water it out throughout the day. So I'll constantly fill up my Yeti throughout the day with the one element package in it because I realized too, we have to remember your food intake. If you cook with a lot of salts and seasonings and stuff, there you may already be taking in a good amount of sodium. And then, like we said earlier in the episode, take into account your sweatingness, how much you sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people they think they sweat a lot, or because they work. We associate sometimes working out with sweating and dehydrating yourselves. Which I'll tell you how many times I've been to the gym. Not recently because I've been going a little push myself a little bit more, but go to the gym for a workout. I don't sweat at all. So am I gonna really need to take in that much more water and hydration to offset my workout? No. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things. Like you really
Definitely.
should. I mean, you don't have to get nutty, but they're with high level
Yeah.
athletes, they have them weigh in before practice and after practice to see how much they lost, and then they have to rehydrate with that. You don't
Hmm.
have to do that, but the point being is, if you're really not sweating during your workout, don't freak out. Like, oh my gosh, I had a 2 hour long workout today. Must pound all this water. If you didn't sweat during it because you were just talking between sets and doing whatever, then maybe you don't need
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah. No, you can, that's a really, some people don't actually sweat as much though, too, which is another thing. So,
Mhm.
but that can be a reliable way, a somewhat reliable way to just notice your need. Uh, what was I gonna say though? Oh, going back to the water quality and the water source though.
Hmm.
Um, something that's really has grown in popularity is reverse osmosis systems. And it's because of, people are afraid of the quality of water because, there's a lot of stuff in our water depending
Yeah.
on where you're living.
Yeah.
Um, things like heavy metals, which was why you and Lan had gotten your water tested.
Hmm.
And something like reverse osmosis removes everything from the water. So it's very pure, right? But then also too, you're missing the electrolyte. So something like that. And this is why you were saying zero water doesn't do it to the extent that reverse osmosis does, but it does do it obviously to some extent.
Hmm.
That's where you can add things back in then, whether that be like Celtic sea salt or using the, element packets or putting lemon or lime or something in your water to help your body absorb that. Because you have to remember like water was made to properly hydrate us. It's just through all of this like industrialization and
Hmm.
like whether that be now filtering because there's chemicals in our water now that's affecting the quality of the water, not only the quality of the water, but the its ability to properly hydrate us too. So
Yeah.
you can always add things back in if you are using something that's really cleaning out a lot of what's in
Mm.
that water.
So let's give people practical tips. One for like people that live, let's in we'll say in where we grew up, the Northeast, where you're not overly hot, like, and then we can give some practical tips about how to help hydrate yourself for someone in like a Florida slash Arizona, because it's like I think 115 in Arizona right now or
Mhm.
something like that, something crazy. Let's give some practical tips on that stuff of just like, I mean, for our area, we already talked about it. Really, is since you don't have to worry about the weather and being outside taking so much out of you all the time. Just in the summer times when it's hot, make sure, and if you notice you're outside more, make sure that your water is not just water, you're taking in other things as well because you're sweating out a lot, like putting lemon or limes in there, a little bit of orange juice, just or an element package or Celtic sea salt. These are little things you can add into your water to help yourself stay hydrated, not just take in
Yes.
more water. Because
Yeah.
the end all be all is not just take in more water. The end all be all is take in better hydration.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what, another thing is too that we forgot to touch on is not even just sweating and humidity and exercise, but also if you are like someone with digestive issues and you're
Mhm.
having frequent diarrhea,
Yep.
you need to really think about drinking more electrolytes,
Yes.
and especially more water because that is very dehydrating.
Oh yeah. That's where Pedialyte comes into play. Well, that I'm not literally, you don't have to drink Pedialyte, but that's why Pedialyte was
Right.
came around because
Yes.
when kids would have really bad diarrhea and stuff, or anybody would, and
Everyone gets funny saying that word.
yeah.
Just
Um,
in your face just
I was
now.
just like,
You
oh.
paused.
Um, so but yeah, so the Pedialyte helps replenish what you lose when you have really, really bad diarrhea incidences, or like as quote unquote people call it the runs type stuff. Something to think about as well. You can also use Pedialyte as a normal hydration thing, as if you want to, that's fine as well. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it. uh,
Um, yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
that's like another scenario that you would want to think about drinking more. But in terms of practical tips, like at least make sure you're drinking half your body weight.
Hmm.
Some really easy ways to incorporate this new habit if you're not someone that drinks water, uh, get a water bottle with numbering on the side so you know how much you're drinking.
Hmm.
Put it on your work desk, put it, in plain sight, set a phone alarm, habit stack. So
Yes.
this, yeah, so like I know my coach does this. She doesn't leave the gym until her water bottle is finished. So even if she has
Mhm.
to sit in the locker room after, like, I think she drinks the whole thing. She posted about
Yeah.
it in her story at one point. But something like that where like you have one thing that you already do. So maybe every morning you get up and brush your teeth. That's
Hmm.
a habit that's already in place. After that, you're always going to drink 8 ounces of water. Like
Hmm.
start to like link those two together. Because when those two are linked, then it's easier to remember to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's another great way, setting a phone alarm. Um, what else? What else? Making it taste good. So again, if you want to put something in it or you like something, maybe fizziness sometimes, like do things like that. Those are some really nice ways to leave it next to your bed. I love doing this at night, putting a water bottle or glass next to my bed. So the first thing that I look at in the morning is this water, and I can just drink that first thing.
Yeah.
That makes it
I do
really
that.
easy.
I
Yeah.
usually drink whatever's left in my water bottle for the night.
Yeah, that was my one TikTok that went viral was drink that and put your water bottle next to your bed. I
Nice.
liked that one. Um, but yeah, so those are really easy ways to incorporate more.
Mhm,
And then along with that, if you are in a, if you're in a humid place,
mhm,
if it's summertime, if you're sweating more, if you are exercising, you need to be drinking more than half your body weight. So
mhm.
you need to start increasing that appropriately. There's no really like hard and fast rule, but
Yeah.
like for 30 minutes, I would even say for like 20 minutes of exercise, you should be drinking another 8 ounces of water on top of
Mhm.
half your body weight.
And now,
Um,
would you suggest people who live in those hotter climates, we'll say, or even in the summertime for us here, would you say if you know you have very like an outdoor activity you're doing, let's say you're running and stuff, you would definitely want to, it's it's not pre-dosing, but it's, I don't even say it would be pre-hydrating, but you want to make sure beforehand that you're taking in all the stuff that you're going to also probably sweat out, right?
yeah. So I would say even yeah, beforehand and after.
Hmm.
And if it's really long-term activity, like if it's, over an hour, I mean, throughout.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's even a half hour, right? If you're in the sun, you need to be hydrating throughout.
Yeah.
Because remember, you're not going to get the signs and symptoms until you're moderately dehydrated versus
Mhm.
mild.
Yeah. Which we want to keep you at the mild, not the
Yeah,
moderate, or
sure.
to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, again, you think about performance, so organ systems start being impacted at mildly dehydrated. So why would you want to let that impact your workout or your athletic performance or whatnot?
Yep. I think this was a very eye-opening conversation for people because, like I said, just drinking a gallon of water a day does not mean that you're going to be hydrated. That's the
Mhm.
main takeaway we're saying. Like just you're drinking the water a day does not always mean hydration. We say hydration, yes, drink your water, but Amanda said like she put some stuff in her water. I put stuff in my water. You want to make sure that there are other things too. It's not just water. Like, yes, you don't want high sugary drinks and stuff, but you can have juice. It's okay.
Mhm.
You know, that
Oh, yeah.
it used
Yeah,
to be water, but it's like Amanda says, if you're 200 pounds and you want to drink half your body weight in ounces of water, it's usually ounces, it's ounces of water, but it's also be ounces of fluid. Now, we're not saying drink 100 ounces of cranberry juice that is like 50 grams of sugar, because that's a lot of darn sugar in the day. But you can also, if you're, don't be so scared to drink other things, is kind of what we're saying.
yeah, I mean, it might even be helpful in some cases if you do need those extra electrolytes.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just obviously, if someone has higher blood sugar, you wanna be careful of
Of
those kind
course,
of
yes.
things, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You need, though that's on an individual basis. You need to know your
yes.
own body. If you should not be drinking
Juices pure
blood sugar.
juices can definitely be helpful and even
Yeah.
added to water, that's probably one of my favorite ways to recommend it and even
Mhm.
use it is by using some in water and mixing
Yeah.
it up.
You can always cut it with water. Doesn't taste
Yes.
as sweet, but that's okay.
Yeah,
It can still be more palatable than water because there are people out there that are like, I can't drink water, and I'm like, what?
you can.
You can do it. Don't worry. It's
Yeah.
just it's
No, but making it taste better is important if it is
Mhm.
someone that is having trouble getting it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Um,
think this was a really great podcast.
yeah. Another wonderful episode as always. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please like, subscribe, please leave us a rating, please review, tell your friends so we can help grow the pod. And until next week, I'll see you later. Bye, Amanda.
Bye.